you.
Okay. So let's start out. No, so then I knew that I looked at all the papers they had, and one of them was Yupo, and I was like, I tried a couple times, and I was like, this is kind of weird because it's really slick. And then the more and more I started going with acrylics with Holbein, acrylics work really well on a Yupo. But then I just realized that I wasn't using my watercolor thick enough, I think, is when I was using, because I was using too much water, because it puddles up, because it's plastic, it's polypropylene, that's what it is. It's a plastic paper. And so basically it's going to not absorb into the paper. It's going to adhere itself to the paper. They made that, but it doesn't absorb into the paper. So you're going to get puddles of water. So if you use too much water, of course, it's not going to adhere really well. So I started learning, and my whole thing is float your pigment, right? It's like, that's what I always teach people in watercolor. So when you're floating your pigment, you don't need as much water on Yupo because it's just nothing absorbs. And so it's just fun. And if you see up there, let me just change the camera, and over there are some of the images that I had done. And, Tom, could you hold up just one right there? So this one was this one is a watercolor on the Yupo, and I did this actually for a demonstration, actually online, also for a watercolor club and stuff. And it's really interesting because it doesn't handle like paper at all, because you just got to get out of your mind that this is not like your regular paper. And so you just have to realize that you got to use the paint thicker, and also I can use white. And so you look at some of the parts really close up, some of the flowers are pretty thick. And so, and it's almost like you're using gouache in a way, but you're not. These are all just Holbein watercolors that I'm using today. I'm not using any gouache, but you can use gouache on it also. And gouache is just a opaque watercolor, and you can use it thick. And a lot of oil painters actually has been starting to use the acrylic gouache and also the watercolor gouache. But it's but for today, I'm gonna do two paintings, by the way. Thank you, Tom. And so let me just change the camera to the tabletop now.
Hey, Dave,
Yeah.
do you have to be careful about bending after the work is dry?
No, not really. No, unless you use it really thick. But like Tom just held that up. I mean, you can just bend it all the way, and it doesn't come off unless it's maybe really thick in a big area. I didn't bring because I did some acrylics on that too. Acrylics work really well on Yupo. I did a couple of paintings that are acrylic, and for that, it's really neat because it's like plastic on plastic. So it just works out really nice and smooth. You can blend in really well. And I started as a watercolor. And actually, I think the one duck right there, that's, I think, acrylic. That's acrylic, yeah. So and you can see I also use an airbrush, which I'll be using today, an airbrush, to get some of the watercolor. And actually that was acrylic, but same difference. Really, I don't actually use watercolor and acrylic differently. The classes that I do in acrylic, I call them water media, but I use them because in acrylic, you have the fluid, you have the ink, which is what I put in the airbrush. I put ink acrylic, and then there's gouache acrylic and heavy bodied acrylic. And you may hear some music right now, but I think upstairs they're playing some music or something. So no, I don't think it's through the floor. So anyways,
David, it sounds similar to an approach to like a watercolor canvas.
yeah, it's even slicker than that. It's even slicker than that. It's really slick. It's like Bristol board almost. I would say the closest thing is going to be Bristol board, or what's the other the rock paper? What's the Terraskin? The Terraskin. That's even not as I don't think as slick as Yupo. Yupo, though, a lot of people like to take a little like one of those washcloths or those and dishwashing with the green side, and they like to just kind of rough it up a little bit, just to give it like take off if there's something. And also watch your hands, because of this, it picks up your fingerprints really easily. So when you're putting on, now the best thing about acrylic or about the Yupo is it takes masking fluid like nobody's business. It's so great. So you notice I just put some masking fluid on there, and before you started, you can see it right there. So I put it on there, and the Holbein is green. They have a Holbein, it's this masking fluid. It's really thin, and you don't need very much. And if you do need to get some of this off of there because you didn't hit something, you just take the magic eraser and it comes right off. And that's with the acrylic. This is watercolor, so everything is going to come off. It's very easy to scrub it out really easily. So I'm going to do two, so I better get started here. And this one, I'm going to do a flowers one. Flowers seem to be really fun because you can do the light flowers. Like I'm going to do these roses since it's Valentine's Day is coming up. So it'd be a good present. So here is the light roses. See, it's going to be light. And so I can do a fun background and have it all floatiness, that kind of thing, as you see the ones in over there. It's going to be like that where I can do that. And then keep the roses white, and then I can paint them in later. So it's really easy for that. And then I'm gonna do another one, and that will be of a dove. And for this one, I'm gonna use a bunch of different things afterwards. I'm gonna do stencils. I'm gonna use some airbrushing on it. I'm gonna do a couple of things and fun things with this one. So it'll be kind of neat. And the reason I'm doing two is because it takes forever to dry. Because it's like if you do it really puddly, and so I'll just put that one aside, let it dry. I don't like using a hairdryer, even though I do have one here, but I don't like to use it. It's just because it's forcing the paint to stop doing what it's supposed to be doing. Like, and when you get those swirls, yeah.
Okay, they're asking to move your painting over a little, and also, yeah, it's not as quite as washed out now. We
Okay.
can't help the, yeah, I think it's as clear as we can get it.
Okay.
Okay, I hope that helps. Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Susan. All right, let's get going here. Since we're going to do two. Oh boy, I didn't clean them. So tonight I do, every Thursday I do a paint along. And tonight we're doing a master copy. We're copying a master's work, and we're doing a John Pike. John Pike, and so this is what we're doing tonight. So you can follow me along tonight. This is what we're going to be painting. So we're doing a winter scene of these skiers. And so that I have it all drawn up. And so that'll be tonight on Thursday night. And I noticed that Lori's husband, because I always have a beer of the evening too. And so Lori had given me this for her husband, the Double Cross Brewery. Thank you, Lori. And that'll be tonight, and I'll be testing it. I'll give it a rating. No, I haven't downgraded many because I really like beer pretty much. So I know it's not like you're gonna get a bad rating. There's only one I don't like really bitter beer, like really bitter, really happy. I don't like that, but even that one got like a 5, out of 11. So all right, so again, being a watercolor now, testing to see if it's dry, the masking fluid, because you don't want it wet. It could be a disaster. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this fun. I'm going to have the background fun. And when I choose the colors, I rarely choose the colors of the photo. And here's the colors of the photo, basically ugly. I mean, it's just greens. And if everybody knows me, I don't like green. So I'm not going to, I probably use a little bit of green, but I'm going to just make the roses pink. I maybe make them salmon color instead of pink. And then the background, I have fun with it. I'm just looking for the values. And usually my students, I give them only black and whites so that they make up their own colors, because you should be making up your own colors. And so I'm just going to work the background, and I'm not going to wet the whole thing. And actually now these new spray bottles they have, I don't know if you ever know these new spray bottles are just awesome. And actually I do have some, I know that Judy wants, somebody wanted one. Oh, one of the ladies in my Libertyville class this afternoon wants one of them. So I got to save one of them for her, but I sell them for $8. I bought a bunch off Amazon, and I brought them down to Florida so everybody can use them. They're really great because instead of like the little misters are great, but you got to keep on pumping. These you just press and it just keeps on going for a little bit.
Wow.
And so it just keeps on spraying for a little bit. And then it doesn't put on so much water. And if you just need a little bit of water, it's just great. Just going to let it float on there. And it doesn't.
Like the airbrush.
Yeah, it's like an airbrush. And so I'm thinking you could probably even put colored water in there. And if you want to put a little wash of it on there, you can do that. But so I just put that on there. I have a bunch of them that they're all used because I use them in a class, but they got me to sell it to them because they're like, oh, we gotta go online. And so I do sell them. They're $8. You can get them on Amazon too, but then you're paying for tax and stuff. And so, but anyways, so I just wet it a little bit and it doesn't shine as much because there's not as much water, but it evenly puts the water on there. And for your regular watercolor paper, it is super, super great. So get yourself one of these instead of like the big spray bottles that just spray it on there. This is a mist. It just puts a mist on there. I love it. Okay, let's have fun in the back here and just let's get some fun colors going. And now you see, and a lot of times I rub it too, because depending on the paper, sometimes if you handle it too much and there's all ink on there, you got to almost wash it off because the ink or the your oils on your fingers, if you touch it too much, will it repel the watercolor. So you have to watch. And then see how I put water, there's a lot more water. So if you put a lot more water, a lot of times the ink is, or the pigment is what's going to show. So you got to make sure that you have enough pigment in your brush to make it stick. And so I'm just going to go in there. It's kind of repelling. I wonder if I touched it too much. It could happen.
What color are you using?
I'm using lavender, a lilac. And this one is a turquoise blue with a horizon blue.
You tape it down just to keep it in place, or
Yeah.
That wouldn't work.
No, this never warps. You don't have to, and this is medium. I have the samples are medium, heavy, and a translucent. So there's one that's translucent. So you can paint on the back of it with an acrylic or a dark color, and it'll kind of shine through your paper. I've done that, and that's kind of fun too. I notice this is repelling.
Can you keep one of your hands on the paper? Because every time you lift it up, it goes out of focus and then.
Okay.
It's okay. Yeah, yeah. So that's much clearer now.
Okay.
You don't notice it as much on the TV as on the Zoom. No. Okay.
Any questions from anybody out there? Just let us know. Let me know.
Yeah, it hasn't been any so far.
Okay. You can unmute yourself too. I can hear you. Hello, Zoom. So see, I'm getting a lot of where it's not taking to the paper. So I must have had this paper. I didn't wash it beforehand too. Sometimes if you scrub it a little bit, it just gives you a little bit more, like I must have had something on this, or I must have handled it too much. That happens with the paper. But then the thicker you go with more pigment, the less it happens. And there is no front or back side to this either. So if you're thinking, oh, well, you maybe use the wrong side, it's the same on both sides. So I'm just going to dip into a bunch of different colors. I just lay it in there. And you can also see what happens when you spray it. You can just spray it and it'll kind of give you little dots on there. Actually, I kind of like the little dots that I've got going here.
Seems to sort of sit on the paper, so completely opposite to you're using.
Yeah, it just sits down there, and depending on if you had your fingers on there or something's on there, or maybe I sprayed something on there that I didn't really realize that, or maybe that's what I never used this like that first. Maybe that's because I shouldn't have done that. I'll try that different on this side and see how that works. I think it is. It must be, because I've never had it work like this where it kind of repels. It's repelling really that, but. So if I take my big brush, let's try that down here. Just going to put a big wash down here and not spray it. Wow, it is repelling like nobody's business on this one. Look at the dots I'm getting.
Does it eventually set on it?
I don't know. This has never happened. I'm not sure why this is doing the little dots in here.
I have a comment from Jackie Lucas to say that you can also prepare your paper with rubbing alcohol.
Oh, okay.
That sounds like, yeah, to clean it, to avoid the bits that the
Oh, thanks. I didn't even think about that.
The same effect if you put salt on there though.
Yeah, that's the same effect, so I just go with whatever happens, really. If you think about your, paper, and if something happens like this, you just go with it. Nothing you can do, for one. It'd be interesting to see if the same thing happens on this one, Maybe what I'll do on this one first is rub it first with something.
You could just wash it off. though, right?
Yeah,
And you could then do the alcohol. and
Yeah,
start over again if
yeah.
you had to.
like if I wanted to just say I didn't like this whole area I just did, I have to watch out because I did put masking fluid. So yeah, watch out, you don't take that, but I can just go like this and just rub it and just try it again. You know, that's the nice thing about Yupo. And also, even if it's dry, if it's totally dry and you don't like it, put it in the water and it comes back to white. Again, it sits on top. And I'm gonna rub it a little bit more just to see if maybe I can, if
I
that'll
did
help.
notice some of the staining paints can't stain it.
What's that?
Some of the staining paints can't.
Oh, yeah,
stain
they
it.
stain. They
So
definitely
you're not
stain it.
Always getting back to total white, but
David, do you lose your drawing though when you?
kind of looks like. that.
Yeah, I lost a little bit of it. Yep.
You'll find it again.
It's not that big a drawing on this thing. Like if it was a portrait or something, it'd be difficult, but it's just flowers and, you know, stems. And so I can make that up as I go along too. And so I'm gonna go right away also with my darks. I'm not gonna hold back with my, these are my darks, kind of like mediums and darks. And so my lights are masked out already. So I don't have to worry, whatever I do here, it could be all dark, it could be a lot of pigment, it could be all kinds of textures, because it's all, this is my dark pattern, and I'm gonna leave this part white because I want, that's part of my composition, right? Is the light, and then the light goes into the flowers, and this is all gonna be my darks. My darks meaning that there may be some middle tone in there, but that's my dark. So this is my dark, and the flowers are lighter than that. So anything lighter than the background, ooh, look at that. What I pick up there. Speaking of darks.
So is that fresh paint on your palette that it lifts up so nicely?
No, that's one thing about Holbein paints. You never have to worry. They always are, they instantly rejuvenate. They never have to be, I squeeze the whole tube in usually, and I don't, because they don't have oxycal in it, so they don't dry to a hard clump, and they rejuvenate instantly. So this is all like about a week old that I let it dry. I didn't use it since last Wednesday or last Thursday. Actually, no, I used my other palette for Saturday class. So yeah, this hasn't been used until last Thursday. It is really weird that it's doing the dots. That is so weird. Well, I got a dotty painting. It is. Look at that. It's like, look at over here.
Flowers have aphids.
I want.
It's okay.
And you can see, you can do like thicker, and then you can, it's still gonna blend down to the water. The water is definitely, once the water is gone, then you're gonna get the pigment, whatever's left over. So you always gotta think. And I always tell my students that it doesn't matter what you paint on, as long as you know how much pigment, what will happen when you put so much pigment in so much water. Like I can paint on this plastic right here. If I know that there's water and I can put it on there, if I use enough thick pigment, but the only thing I don't understand is why it's doing the dots. And I'm wondering if it's because I sprayed it and it activated the paper first when I did the little misting, because I never did that before. So I'm thinking that's activated like different from when the little spots from the mister, maybe, I don't know. That's very
And the
interesting.
area that you wiped down, it doesn't seem to be dotting.
No, it doesn't seem, that doesn't seem to be as dotty now.
Mm-mm. That must have been.
Always something to learn. You learn something new every day. And
And
so,
the colors, you know how when they're in watercolor and they dry and they're lighter, do they seem to do that as much on the Yupo?
yeah, it's the same thing because it's all about the water pigment ratio. You know, most artists, they use the pigment to a point where it's very, very, so much more water. You're putting more glaze on. And so then it's whenever it's dried up, then you're going to get whatever you had left there with pigment, because then the water's gone. So whatever pigment you have left, that's all you have. So go back to my other brush, and I'm going to put some of these darks in here right away. And you notice I don't have much like green, and I'm not going by the color of the picture. Definitely not going by, well, kind of. Well, it's kind of grays, and I'm really into grays lately. If you look at a lot of artists' work, I've looked at a lot of the winners of this year's AWS. Man, everybody's using black and grays and a lot of grays and ultra, or what do you call those? The neutral tints. You know, just they're using a lot of that. And I actually used it in my TWSA entry this year. Well, hopefully I can get in, but we'll see. That was the end of last month that the end deadline was. So hopefully you guys entered.
So David, to get that second layer, are you using even thicker paint to go over the
Yep.
top of that background?
Yeah, I'm using a little bit thicker. My brush is wet, but I'm using a lot of pigment. It's all about how much pigment you use. You got to have a lot of pigment in there. And also I'm a person that adds light to dark. You know, I put light on top of dark. So I have white on my palette. These colors, these lilacs and stuff there. Watch this. I can put this on top of there and it's going to be a lighter color. Yeah, I can put white and it'll float because now it's wet underneath. And so I need to have a lot of pigment. If I don't have a lot of pigment, it's not going to show, right? So there's a little bit, but now this is kind of a grayish, which isn't good because the flowers, I want them to stand out the most. And this is all darker than the flowers. So I'm still fine with the, you know, some people will maybe make the background darker or lighter, but as long as that your background is darker than the flowers, you're good. And you can be a different color too, and that can be the separation also. So I'm gonna put this one aside now and let that dry because that's pretty much the background. And I can still go in there later when it's dry. Look at this, is just bleeding all over the place. So that shows me that I didn't use enough paint. So I had more water in my brush. So I'm always making sure I know how much water I have in my brush. And usually I work on a towel. I'm not working on a towel today, but usually I work on a towel in my Thursday nights. I always have a towel down. And so I don't hardly ever even have this in my hand. I just go anywhere in my palette and just, you know, go to Goodwill. They're like $3, sometimes $1.99, you know, a towel, a big white towel. I always get white and I just, you know, when it's ruined, and now I started using oils and though now I'm going to start really ruining them. Oop. So now let's get this one going here. This is gonna be the dove. And so this one we're gonna have fun with. I'm not gonna spray it first and see if maybe that was an issue. So we're just gonna get that big brush. And so what I have here in this is gonna be this image. And so what I did is I manipulated the photo in Photoshop. I do that a lot when I'm doing things. And what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna make the background just really, I'm gonna leave a lot of white. Where the blue is, I'm gonna leave that white. I just want it to be almost like a vignette. And I want to have a bunch of things, just fun droppings and stuff, not droppings of the bird. just the background. And where I have it dark, I want to make sure that's dark so that the dove pops out. And then you're going to see later on what I'm going to do is I'm going to add stencil to it and make it kind of like a modern type of painting where the stencil is part of the painting. And I've done one like this before and it really looks really cool. And so I'll show you the stencils I use and where I get them and all that stuff. So let me just put that right here. And so
What do you use to apply your mask?
the mask, I use these brushes from Jerry's Artorama. They come in, they get 3 of these and then you get 3 little ones that are little round ones. And they're like, I think like $3. And you get 8 brushes. They're masking brushes. And now this one you can see is really like it's rubber right now. So it's a rubber brush, but when you're putting it on the paper, all I have to do is make sure it touches it and I go in the edge and that's enough. You know, it's so I don't put soap on or anything like that. I just, you can rub some of it out after a while. So I just pull some of it off of there, but I don't need a super fine brush to put masking fluid down. And actually normally I even have those rubber brushes, you know, ones that are rubber. You know, the tip is just rubber. And you just put that on there. And then take it off on here. Nice thing about Yupo, when you take it off, you just peel it off. It all comes together. And now when we're using acrylic, some of the students use it too thick. And then you can't tell the difference between the part that you use masked and the part that isn't. So if it's too thick, you have to watch that out. You have to watch out for that. And to take it off, you can either use a rubber cement pickup or just your fingers or the what do you call it, the erasers, the kneaded eraser. And so let's have some fun with the background. What kind of color should I use back here? And of course everybody knows purple is my favorite color, so but dove and no dots. No dots, so that must have been the thing. Because I sprayed it and it activated the paper. Because I think what happens is what you're doing is you're taking and putting water on it, but that was because I sprayed it, little dots are coming into it. And so it's only hitting certain spots that are wetter than other spots.
The water
water does something to the paper then.
Yeah, so I'm gonna spray it afterwards. Let me see what happens when I do it afterwards. See how thick this is and runny? So make it nice and dark, or a little darker there. A little spattering. Now, that's the part that people love about Yupo. It's like that pouring, everybody's doing those acrylic pouring, you get all those little things happening. Well, that's what people like. Usually people use the alcohol inks for Yupo because it's sort of like you really don't have to think when you're painting. You just put it in there, let the watercolor just do its own thing, or the inks do its own thing. But this is like ink now because I have enough water here. See how it's just blurring, and it's going to keep on doing that. And you can push things around, you can pick things up. I can actually make this paper towel has texture. Watch this. If I put this down, it'll actually pick up the texture of the paper towel. Can you see that? I'm not going to keep it, but I'm just going to show you how you different things. Yeah, it's like a stencil stuff. You can see the little lines in there of whatever paper you had. I'm not going to want that, so I'm just going to go over it. I just want to show you that. That's the nice thing about Yupo. You just play around in the background until you like it, and then some parts are thicker, some parts are thinner, some parts are blurry, some parts are you put salt on there, you can scrape it. Now I know there's a couple of artists out there who actually done really fine detailed work with Yupo, and they just, I think it's, you have to use your paint a little bit thicker. Like when I did the portraits and stuff, I got pretty detailed with those because I just went a little bit thicker.
Kathy Weber do Yupo or the Terrace?
I think Terraskin. Yeah.
But that's always very interesting.
Kathy Weber on Zoom? Nope. She could tell us.
Yeah, she learned
Did you see her article in watercolor?
Yeah, it was nice. So the nice thing about this masking fluid, the Holbein, is that it repels it a little bit too, and so that it doesn't stay on there. So I can see, like, see how the wing, I can see the wing throughout that because it just repels it and pushes it away from itself when it's really wet. And so that's pretty cool. I find that to be really fun. And so I'm looking at my value study because this is my value study. I'm going to take the bottom of the bird, make it dark, and the top of the bird is going to be light against the dark background. So that was the whole idea. In the photograph that I found, there was a bunch of stuff down here. There's a tree, and these were trees, so I blurred those things out. So what I did is I just picked out the dove. I blurred everything out of focus so that I didn't see all that stuff. I don't want to see that stuff because I'm not painting a tree. I'm not painting leaves. I'm painting a fun background with the colors that I like, you know, and so you do what you have to do to make the values work and the composition work. And then the rest you leave up to the paper to give you that beautiful effect. And look when I spatter, and there's a lot of spatter around here. But like if you don't like that stuff, you just wipe it up, see? It's basically you're painting on plastic. And so whatever you can do on plastic. But I mean, it helps you when you go back to your regular paper because then you're using enough pigment, you know, and most watercolors don't use enough pigment to control the pigment. When to control pigment, you need a lot of pigment. And if you just have water, you can't control that. When you're doing a tint and stuff, you can't control where the paint goes, right? So you need a lot of pigment. And so this helps you a lot. And same thing with my acrylics. It helped me a lot. My acrylics helped me a lot with working watercolor because it started making me use more pigment because it's about how much pigment you get on here. If you don't have pigment, it's just going to be a thin layer of light color. But when you're using a lot of paint, like now I'm going to put a little dots in here, and that's really thick. See, it's really wet, but I'm putting a real thick amount of paint on there. It's going to bleed out. It's going to do its thing. It's going to keep on going. Now, if I wanted to stop it to do that, I could also use the hairdryer. But hairdryer on Yupo paper, it pushes everything all over the place.
David?
Let me show you. Yes.
David, is there a difference between acrylic and ink? Or what is the difference?
The acrylic ink, they have an acrylic ink. It's like an ink. It's really thin, but it's acrylic. So it dries like a plastic.
So aren't all inks acrylic?
I'm not, no, ink is like ink. Ink is ink.
Is there, what does one do versus the other?
I think one's a dye and one's a pigment.
Yeah, I think the pigment, the pigment one is like, the ink acrylic is a pigment, but I think it's like you said, it's a dye. It's more not so much pigment based. So if I use a hair dryer on it, I can push it. See, I'm pushing it. Oh. So you can push the pigment around, and if you have a really blasting one, but look at the fun stuff happening in there. But I do want to get some things happening in there later on with a thing. So I don't want too much happening here because I'm gonna put a stencil on it. So I'm gonna show you with some stencils. So let me get rid of some of this a little bit so that I can put a stencil. Let's see, I'm gonna put the light stencil on here and a dark stencil down here. Now, soft edges. I'm all about soft edges lately in my newsletters, all about creating soft edges. It's hard to do that, Yupo. Like this edge right here, if I want it soft, it's hard to get it to keep on going. So I have to wet the whole area, and hopefully that will just keep on going. But you're not going to get a soft, smooth edge where you can control it as much as you can like a paper. It's just harder to do with Yupo to get yourself soft edges on things. Because sometimes the Yupo gives a mind of its own. And so I'm gonna spatter this a little bit and have some fun in there. We're gonna put this aside now, let that dry.
Can you use Yupo for Illinois Watercolor Society?
I don't know. You can't for TWSA. AWS, I think, I'm not sure if you can AWS either. I'm not sure. There's you have to read the perspectives. Because some of them say just, watercolor paper, regular watercolor paper, but I'm not sure about Yupo. Although state in there, no Yupo, or sorry about that. Yeah.
David, is your swan done with a hairdryer, that background, is that how you got it to go like that?
Which one? The swan? The one on the right?
Yeah.
That was a stencil. It's a stencil. Yeah, there's a stencil on that one, on the background.
Yeah.
To make those little lines. That's a stencil,
Oh.
which I'll be showing you how to use. And so now this one. And take the masking fluid off. See how easy it is. One thing, it's so neat because it all peels off like one big sheet.
So is it all dry now? Your-
Not completely, but where I want it to be.
Yeah. Dry now.
We can break whenever it works for you too. if you
Okay.
need break time to dry.
Let me get the color on these and then. And again, it isn't so interesting watching me taking masking fluid off.
As good as watching paint dry.
Yeah. It's very interesting though. I'm glad I did that with the hairdryer because here it didn't work at all. So that, I'm not the hairdryer, but the mister before you do it, gets you dots. So that's something I always tell my students is practice with everything. How do you know if something happens? Nothing has directions on it. These don't come with directions. Brushes don't come with directions. Nothing comes with the directions as for artists. So you can't just start using something, like I just did this morning, like when I just sprayed it. Because if you don't know what happens, I never did that before. And it's interesting though, because look at all the dots I got. And I didn't get that at all on here because I didn't spray it. So it just shows the difference because, it's two different effects that I got, not knowing that the sprayer gives you that effect. That's kind of neat though. So if you need this effect, now you know how to get it. Spray your Yupo first, and it gives you a bunch of dots that you can't get rid of. Very interesting. And also handling your brush. A lot of times people, they say, oh, the way you're handling your brush is that's only because sometimes I just take my brush and just practice on like new paper, or I just take a sheet of paper that I've never worked on before, or some cheap paper, and just try your brush and see what that brush can do. Like, what can you do by pushing it into your paper, blending it this way or that way? Sometimes I gotta look at the photo to see what I masked for it out. Oop, that's still wet. That's okay, because nice thing is, let's say I want to bring something back. Let's say I want to bring back this leaf right here, and I just feel like I got too much paint on it. All I got to do is go like this, rub around it. Of course, my brush is dirty.
Oh, boy.
The brush is always dirty. And see how you can just rub it out. Blot it maybe a little bit, and I got my white paper back, right? But then I don't want that to be white. I want it to be a color. So I'll just put it in that little color right there. And you can also do it with your brush. See, I'm just taking my brush and re-wetting it, and then you're not gonna get those watermarks because there's no, like, the paper is damp, and so it's either wet or dry here. So it's like the dampness will not give you a watermark. Like the edges will not be a watermark ever, because it just, that doesn't do that. You don't have that option, or you don't need that option. So now I'm gonna just put a real light color on here real quick, and then if you want, we can take a break. Or we can just keep on going. Well, that's gonna have to be dry too, so we'll take a break after I color these a little bit. And so I'm gonna make, I have this jaune number 4, I think, or jaune number 2. I forgot what number it is. And I use that with a orange, and it makes like a salmony color. You can get all those colors, you can get certain colors, but to buy that many colors is just so expensive. You don't even need lavender. All you need is purple and white. You need a lot of white is what you gotta do, in titanium and white. And then you make all those fun colors like the jaune number. You can take an orange and put white into that. It'll make the same color. All those colors that look opaque, just add your bright colors and then put white into them, and I'll take them down to like a pastel-y color, which I like. I like the lilac. Right here's lilac. I'm not using that right now. Forgot I'm still using my
What are you calling that interesting sounding color?
jaune.
It's French.
It's French color, jaune number 4.
I think in French.
Oh, okay.
If
So it's you
if
and
my
me.
40-year-old French is like
Yeah.
remembering
Let me
correctly.
Google it.
Jaune. I don't know if it's 2 or 4. I think maybe 4. Jaune number 4. Let's see if I.
What brand is that, Dave?
Holbein, of course. Here.
No, it's kind of gold, yolk of an egg.
Yeah.
I liked using it with orange because then I make a salmony color. I like salmon color more than like pink. Gives you a little bit more orange into your red.
David, is the white watercolor?
Yep. And it's some titanium. I always use titanium. Don't use Chinese because it's transparent and doesn't, it defeats the purpose of using a white, because it just disappears. So I use titanium. It's opaque, and that way it makes it nice and titanium white. I used to use Chinese white all the time, and then it would always disappear. Like, I just put it on there and it just goes away because it's transparent, and so you don't see. And especially on the black paper, it never did anything. It was just like constantly disappearing. So you had to put it on so thick that it was really, really thick. So let me just put this on really quickly, leaving some whites. And again, I don't have to worry so much about soft edges as much as on watercolor paper, because it's harder to do that. But that's not about this painting. This painting, the background is soft edged because it's just wild and crazy. So that's my soft edges back there. The rest is going to be light against the dark, or a different color between that and the foreground and the background. The objects are all flowers, right? And so I'm just going to go in there and make them really quickly. Masking fluid still on there. Any questions from the Zoom world?
No,
Nope.
so far they're stunned. Or they're just.
They're drinking their cup of coffee. I'm gonna drink a cup of coffee. Mm.
No, when you put that one dot of orange up there by your buds over in the blue, you put it on top of the blue, didn't you?
Yeah.
And it,
Yeah.
because it's dry, the last one.
Yep, I can just put it right on top. It's wet. It will lift a little bit, yeah. But if you rub it a little bit, then it'll kind of take that what's underneath it away and put whatever on top. What I did right there. That's what I love about the Yupo, is that, especially with watercolor, you don't have to worry about anything. If I don't like that whole corner, I'm gonna wipe it off and do it again. And it's like, you don't have to worry about the paper being damaged. It's not going to damage, like arches or something. You rub it and it's going to absorb into the paper. Nothing is absorbing unless you have a tinted color that does leave a little bit of tint, but you don't have to worry about that. There's nothing to worry about it.
Excuse me, because it does lift, do you have to put a sealer on the
I like to put, yeah, I like to make it, lately I've been trying to do that a lot more too, ever since Brianna Brown told us how about that. I've been trying to not use glass anymore. I think it's a good thing. I want to do that with all my paintings now, just have it so that it's you sprayed over it. And now that I just started doing some oils this week, oil painting on, they just brought out an oil paper. It's a paper for oil paint. And I still use the aqua oils, the ones that you can use water with. But I'm finding it really fun because I started like a watercolor in oils and then I finish it like an oil, really thick. I use really thick paint on there. So I've just been doing that this last 2 weeks and it's fun.
Question from the virtual crowd here. They want to know, and Alan wants to know, what the titanium white you used. I think it is.
Holbein.
The Holbein.
Yeah, I use everything Holbein because it doesn't have oxgall in it and it doesn't dry out. So I can put the whole tube in. You're never going to waste a drop of the paint. With a lot of the other paints, they have oxgall, and what happens is it turns out to a really hard clump and you can't rejuvenate it and you just can't pick up a lot of paint. Just like I said, I just put the whole tube in and you just, it always rejuvenates instantly. And they're very vibrant colors. They're very finely ground colors and they're so potent. They're almost like what do you call that? Not hyper, what is it? What's the word for intensity? The intensity of it. Saturated, that's the word I was looking for, saturated. They're very saturated colors. Boy, they're just, sometimes I found that they're almost too bright. They're too colorful sometimes. And I was like, when I started using grays, I was like, oh, thank God I got some grays in here because if you have too many colors, then everything looks colorful, right? So nice to have a few grays in there to make the colors really pop out. And so what I'm doing now is I'm putting the lights, and the very last thing I'll do is the darks that are going to accompany the lights and make those come forward in negative painting kind of type of thing.
So when you spray over, instead of using glass, would you use the same thing on the Yupo painting as the painting on paper?
Yeah.
And what would that be? What do you use?
Like a Krylon
Varnish.
varnish.
Right. Yupo Paper does recommend you use it, a Krylon varnish or a spray varnish on.
Yeah, and on top of it, and it also makes it shiny. It depends unless you use a matte varnish. And what I had noticed too is that when I'm starting to use some of these papers, you have to mount them on something. And so, because you can't just have this floppy little sheet of paper and then, frame it on nothing unless you put it onto a white, acid-free paper. But I was told that a lot of people put it with like a medium gel, like an acrylic gel medium, and they just put it on there and they press it and they use one of those rollers and just roll it on there and then just put books on it and then just leave it to dry.
Press it on the what?
On like a hardboard maybe, or acid-free board.
Doesn't even matter if it's acid-free, probably.
Probably not. You're probably right.
And when you go when you do that, do you use a mat around it?
No, I don't want to use a mat because that's another thing you got to pay for. So I learned that from the plein air painters because I was out there in Grand Marais. And it's so easy for them to frame something. All they do is they buy a plein air frame, and then there's a little bit of a mat on the frame itself, kind of like a mat type of thing. They just pop it in there, staple it, and you're done. It's like, you know what? This is ridiculous. This is watercolors. we have to mat it. We got to glass it and all that stuff. That's so much extra cost, which I had done when I was up there. It's like I had to bring all that stuff, and they're just slopping them in there because right away when you're in the shows, you have to get it done right then. And so the oil painters, I'm thinking, that's enough of that. And actually, I was painting on a gessoed board, my watercolors. So I didn't have the right frames though. So now I got to order some bunch of new frames and stuff that kind of look like that, so that you don't have to use a mat and stuff, because those are nice. Those plein air frames look pretty neat too.
And I'm just looking them up on Jerry's Artorama.
Yeah, when I went to Jerry's Artorama to their in North Carolina, I went to their, what do you call it, Arts in the Carolinas. I went there with Legion, and they had sale stacks and stacks of frames. I wish I could have bought some, but the lines were like 2 hours long to buy stuff. I was like, there was a really problem there this year. But actually, why don't we let this dry now? We can take a break for a second, and then we'll come back because I have to wait for this to dry, and then we'll get going on it. So a little break right now, and I'll get back to it.
I might mention we need 12 more people for this workshop to go. So if you're interested.
I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna pause recording.
Just sign up, and if we get 12, then we can.
Again. Okay. So when Rebecca said, can I ask Laurie to get one of the spray bottles for David?
She did. Yeah, she had that.
And then somebody wanted to know what size were they? She said 12, 10, or 5 ounce. What size are
12 ounce.
they? 12
I
ounce.
think it's 12 ounces.
8, no, it's 8.
8.
It's gonna be an 8 ounce.
8 ounces.
8 ounces is your answer.
Of course, yeah.
JR.
All right, so here now, it's almost dry. I will take the masking fluid off of this now. Oh, I guess that's not dry right there. Let's wait for that then. Oh, wait, that's not quite dry yet. So go back to this one. So we'll finish this one up. So all I have to do on this one now is go in there and get my details. I always wait for my paintings, and the details are usually the darks, right? It's the dark areas. With watercolors, you work from light to dark. And so the last thing you do is your darks, and I always call my dark details. So now I go in there with all the super darks, and it creates shapes. The darks create shapes. So I'll go in here now, and I'm using my rigger brush, which is a really fine to get some of these stems. And so I'm drawing actually things. I'm drawing objects, right? I'm drawing the stem. And here's, I can see. You guys can see it a little bit there too.
So you can see both things now, yeah. That's good.
So we can just put that in there. I'm just gonna look at the picture and then just get in there and get the little stems. And like this picture is a really dark one version of it. I lightened it up here so I could see some of the little lighter stuff. But basically, I wanted to show you that because that's my composition. Flowers are light, 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 light. The side is light. And then this is the lighter version. And so that I can see what was in there. But I'm not gonna make it exactly like that. As long as I know that the background is dark and the flowers are light. Now there are some leaves here that are a little bit lighter. And middle tones, I always say that they don't matter. They're really, they can go to the background or the foreground. Usually you try to keep them together, like the lights and darks, so that not everything is light and dark all over the place. And so for those, I'm gonna paint dark around them with a dark color. And it looks like I used a lot of blues and such for the background. So I'll stick with that kind of color in that area. Like this leaf right here has a really nice dark underneath it. And I can then put that dark right into the flower here too. Now you have to watch out because it does pick the stuff up underneath instantly. But if I'm using pigment, it'll just, again, bleed into itself. And it'll be wet in the wet wash. And I can even put some little warmth in there. I can make things happen in that wash by just knowing how much pigment I have on my brush and how much water's there. Always know that. Always know your between your lights and darks. So here, look at how I can just pick up that leaf. There's a leaf right there. And I like that I can do that. And I can do that on the Stonehenge, the white paper too, because it doesn't absorb like arches. Arches tends to absorb a real lot. And so I can't just do like that. I can't just rub in there and get my white paper back. I don't use many colors that stain. So that's to me, it's a good thing because then I don't have to worry about it. Like it's not going to stain the white underneath it. So I can just get that right back. See how I'm just getting these all back?
Dave, when you put the colors on top and there's a color underneath, do you think about them as mixing on your paper then, or not?
They're going to mix together, yeah. And so I'm trying, but the color that I'm putting on is going to supersede the color that's already there because I'm going to mix it into that, or like right here, I just had red there, but look at, I put green on top of that, and the green is showing up more than the red that was up there. So I just pushed the color that I have on top, or the color that's on below, I'm pushing my color that I'm using now on top of that. And I'm rubbing it because it's gonna rub right into there. It picks up right away because it's not absorbing at all. So it will mix itself together with that color, other color.
So what Stonehenge paper were you talking about? The
Stonehenge
watercolor?
Aqua, Stonehenge Aqua, the white is also by Legion Papers. They're ones that make the, and it's a, they make a one, it's just like, you can't compare it to Arches because it's a different paper. It's just, it's a watercolor paper and it's a white watercolor paper. It's 100% cotton, just like all the other papers, 100% cotton, size throughout. They made it so that they would make a cheaper paper, not in quality, but in price. And so that, like a full sheet of that is like $10 a sheet, you know, compared to like nowadays Arches is so expensive. Now, it is not as tough as the Arches because Arches is pretty tough, but it doesn't absorb as much. It's a whole different kind of texture. And you just got to feel it out and see what you think with anything. I mean, I really love it now because I like things sitting on top like this because then I can rub it out. I'm big into rubbing out lately. Actually, I don't know if you, I know that is Ken Collin on Zoom? No, because he went to school at the same place I did, American Academy, and he started out with illustrating, and the illustration style was the rub out, a lot of times with oils even, and with watercolor. And he does that a lot too now. If you look at his paintings, that one, it just what do you call it, the scene inside the ballerina in that is just gorgeous. I mean, but you can see how much rubbing out there is in some spots, and you know, it's not a bad thing to rub out. You know, we always sort of, it gives it kind of like a soft edge look. You get in the paper back, you get white, and so there's times when you should be using that, and it's a great technique to rub out sometimes and get your soft edges. You still want to get your wet into wet edges where they happen themselves and it's very fresh, like some of these right here. I'm not going to touch those because they have soft edges on them. Even though I'm using Yupo, I'm still got a soft edge there, right? So I'm going to keep that because I do want some soft edges in here. And if you let the water be and let it just bleed together. Now, again, because I use a sprayer before, I'm getting all these dots. And I noticed that the more and more I put it on there, then it gets rid, kind of gets rid of them. But it's so funny that that happened on here, but didn't happen on here. And it's the same sheet of paper. It's a big sheet of paper. And so that shows me now if I ever want to get like salt look, spray with that thing first. Because that has never happened. I've never done that before. But I'm gonna somebody suggested to use alcohol and rub it down. That's a pretty good idea too. I'm gonna try that. So thank you, Zoom viewer.
Celia wants to know, who is the artist you mentioned that does rubbing out? Was there a particular artist?
Ken Call, our one of our members.
Last name.
Call.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, he's a member here.
Okay.
I could also use stencils here too to get some things going on too. Real fast. How much time do we have anyways? It's so funny because when I do these on Thursday night, it's always usually an hour, and I always mostly put it right down to the button. But I think I've gotten that way because of work. When I used to work in the advertising agency, it's just like when a project had to be done by a certain time, you had to get it done. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. You had to get it done by that time. And so for the 35 years I was doing that, I got pretty good at, like, when I'm working on something, if it has to be done at a certain time, I know I'm going to get it done by then. So I always finish those on Thursday night, and they're usually about an hour. A lot of times I try to make them shorter even. But sometimes we're talking and I'm drinking beer, and so.
Dave, have you found a location to have your military honoring?
Not yet. No, I'm still working on that, and I still have to do a bunch of stuff on that. But in the meantime, I'm working this new paper, the oil paper. They're having me go around the country now I'm gonna be demonstrating that in Orlando for the NAMTA. So I'm going back down to Florida. I think in April, I'm going back down to Florida, and they have a show called NAMTA. And that's all the products from all the suppliers, like every supplier out there. And they want me to do a big demonstration of oils on paper. And so I'm working on that right now. And I just got done with a big, huge job from this gallery that they basically helped me out with COVID when COVID was happening, because all my workshops went away, every single one of them, except for Dillman's. We still had Dillman's, but I had a job where I work, and I was doing there was a college that was redoing all their walls, and there had be all this athletic stuff, and this company I work for, a gallery I work for in Dallas, has me constantly doing things for like hotels, a lot of abstracts, but this was all photographs of their players, and it was all different kinds of look and stuff. And I put in for the job, and I had to do a bid for the job, and I got it. And it was right before COVID hit, and I got the job, but then they put a hold on it, and I'm like, oh God, it was a big job too. It was like it would take me a whole year to do this job. And I had bought my computer at the time because I know how much money I was going to be getting. And so I bought a $2,000 computer because I needed one that could do a wall that was like 60 feet by 20 feet. I needed the size of that, and you need a big computer to do that. And so I bought the computer when I finally found out that I won the job. And so I had my brother build me a really high-tech computer, which I had here the last time. I didn't want to bring it everywhere I go, so now I got a laptop. But then COVID hit, and I thought they were going to go away, but they didn't. They just took about half a year before they started. And so I just finished the last thing last week of that. And so thank God for that, because I didn't have any, but they're coming back with, the workshop is coming back a little bit, but I'm doing more demos now than I am doing the other things, workshops, which is fine. I don't mind going around the country demoing. And online stuff now is kind of picking up too.
Do you have much opportunity to participate in local shows?
No, I haven't actually shown my stuff either, because I just don't have, and I'm trying to invent a new palette. I'm in the works of trying to make my own palette, because I hate these palettes. And so I'm talking to like I wanted a tin, I want a tin thing with painted white, and then I'm gonna have little inserts with these lip balm things, and I'm just gonna have magnets on the back of them, and you just put them on there, because once you're stuck with these colors, you're stuck with them. So you can never take them out and exchange them or do things with different. So I'm looking right now for a company that will make me a tin, which there's a lot of tin companies. I'm just going to have them all give me a quote, and then I'm just going to do a what do you call it, a Kickstarter.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'll do a Kickstarter, and I got to finish my book that I've all written, but I've got to where you learn how to draw from your imagination. So that's still on the works too. So I've just been a little bit busy.
The reason why I asked is some of you probably know about the aviary show that's over at Bolo, which is coming up, and I just thought you'd have those wonderful wild birds.
Oh yeah, the
That
Bolo
show-
Bog.
Bolo.
Yeah.
And that one has a very good sales record, because the sales all benefit the
Bolo-
preserve there.
The Bolo Bog.
Yeah, so it's worth participating in.
A lot of my students in McHenry have done that one.
I saw one there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now see how I did the masking fluid, I did really roughly, and it was okay, because now I'll just go and clean it up, because even with acrylic, you can use the rubber or the you can use a magic eraser. You just wet the magic eraser and it instantly picks it up. Just like how it's just picking up. Now it will pick up your pencil line too. So if you want your pencil line, just be very careful and see how it's like. I just did brushwork. I didn't care so much what would happen there, because it's gonna be darker anyways. And so I'm just taking the masking fluid off, but there were some spots that left some paint there because I didn't do a really good job putting the masking fluid on there. That's okay. You can easily rub it off. And you can even do it with your brush and with a paper towel. You just rub it off. it's so sturdy a paper. I mean, it's plastic. So, and then people were saying, you know, how permanent it is. I go, it's plastic. How permanent is plastic? You know, it's like, that's all I gotta say is plastic. And so you don't have to worry about it. It's gonna be there for years and years and years to come.
David, a quick question. I don't know the answer to the whole thing is how do you see David's Thursday night demo? Is that the one that's on Facebook?
YouTube.
YouTube.
On YouTube.
I
Yeah.
think there's a link in the newsletter.
Yeah, Lori put a link in the newsletter, I think. So I just took the masking fluid off. Now I'm going to paint the bird really quickly, and I'm going to show you how to do the, and the bird is basically, I'm just going to take a look at the bird. And now I can't get many soft edges because again, soft edges is easier on paper because you just wet it. But wetting on here is not as, it's not as pliable. You know, it's just not, so you just can't do that. Or you can try, but what I do is I wet that area and I put the color in of each. So the background is blue and violets and stuff. So I'll make the dove. Blue and orange are complements. So maybe a little bit of the same thing with the flowers. I'll do a little bit of orangey color. Now the wing down here is really dark. And when do I do my darks? At the end. So you don't worry about your darks until the end. Really just, some people like to put a dark in just so they know what is going to be their darks, you know, just to get their darkest dark. But when it comes to the detailed darks, just wait to the end, because then you're painting pieces. And I want to paint areas, not pieces. Paint areas. I know hyperrealism has been getting a lot of awards and stuff, and I find it very interesting because some of them are just super, super great. But then if you look at Mary White's work, one of my favorite artists, Mary White, if you look at her work, and there's parts that in her work that's really tight too. It's about how much tightness you have in your painting. I like a little bit of tightness and then a lot of looseness too. When you have everything tight, then I feel like everything's tight and there's not, it depends on the composition too, what then is more important. It'd be interesting to see the show at TWSA this year because the two judges are very loose painters. Very, because Andy Evenson is very, you know, he did a demo for us, right? And he did a really loose, not loose, but very minimal stuff. And it's just really soft edges. And then Linda Kemp, who is a negative paint queen, you know, and she doesn't do anything super tight, hardly at all. So it'd be interesting. I try to get the big areas done first. Always the big areas done first. And see, and since I can't have things blended, I kind of blend it with the brush a little bit first. And a little bit thicker than I normally do for watercolor, just a slightly thicker. But inside there, then we'll blend. And it's so funny that I'm not getting the little dots. And thank God I'm not getting the little dots on here because that'd be kind of weird. This bird had a bunch of dots on them. It's like some kind of bird fever, bird flu.
Yeah, that could be a snow scene.
Yeah.
No.
That is so strange. I'm so glad I did that. I've never done that before. Just now I know how it works when you're working that. And also when you're practicing with stuff and trying to don't do it on a painting. Do it on just a scrap of paper and try things on it. And you know, never do those things on your painting, like work it. If it's like something, a commission or something, don't start using something different that you don't know how it works. Don't practice on your commissions or, you know. A lot of times we do that because we think, oh, I can use this technique now. I just saw this. I'm going to try it on there because that'll work well. But if you don't know how to do it, you don't want to do it on your painting. Do it on something that's not your painting. Same thing with the brush work. Like a lot of times it's good to try the brush, what your brush can do on the paper. Like I take a scrap of this Yupo and I'll just try different things and how you can get different effects and stuff. So I don't have my darks in there yet, so I'm gonna cut out some of these areas too. And down here is a little bit darker. This is the wing. I didn't leave this light enough the background, so I'm gonna make this lighter than, because like here in the photo, it's darker, sorry. Here in the photo, this bottom part, this wing is darker than the background light. What I did is I made the background darker, so you gotta decide then, you gotta do one or the other. You can't have, either I gotta rub that out, but I like the way it looks, so I'm gonna go opposite then. I'm just gonna make this light then instead. Lighter than the background. Or make it a different color. Make it a slightly different color. And since my background is blues and purples, then I'm gonna make that so it looks like it's the background, the same thing. Because right here is red, and so if I make it the blue, it'll look like it's the background. Colors are only important when I find it to be warm and cool. That's how I look at my colors. That's what the importance of, not so much, and the values of those colors. Like when this painting, it's so very obvious that the background is a different color than the foreground with the lights and stuff. And so that makes it very easy to make your composition work. These are light, and the background, even though some parts of the background is light as the flowers, but because the color is different, then it doesn't look like that. So that's how you work your background foreground sometimes, because you can just keep the background a certain color, and then anything that's that color will say, I'm a background. And it's also very hard to put a tint of something, a color on here, because it's going to bubble. It's going to like be like a wet wash. And so it's not as easy on watercolor paper. It's easy to do a tint of color because you just put a real lot of water and a little bit of paint. Not so much on Yupo, because it's going to give the same a look. It's kind of hard edged and get some orange in there, I think. Because I want to put a tint on him, but I just realized this is Yupo, so it's gonna be a little hard to put a tint of something on him. We'll try. We'll see what happens. You're gonna get the lines. It's so hard to. Well, it's working. Because it doesn't blend itself like paper does. Paper by itself, you never have to blend anything because it happens on its own. It's blending and puts it wet in the wet, makes it soft edge. Goes up. And this whole area down here is dark, and so I'm going to take the same darkness I have down there as the background, because that way it'll look like it's all one shape. It'll go right into there. Yeah, rarely ever look at the photo for colors, because I'm thinking about colors on my own. If I'm using a certain color, of course I got to use somewhere else, because mostly photographs are not that colorful. And they're not that, not that great looking when it comes to some of the colors. If you have a painting that looks, or a photograph that looks great with the colors, and you want to copy it because of the colors, then yes, go ahead. But I find that most of my pictures, I mean, look at the difference between this and this. This is all blue. It's like.
Can you?
Yeah, we can't see that.
Oh. Yeah, so if you look at this and then look at my picture, of course I kept the blue white, and then the color back here, which is green, blackish green. What if I paint it like that? I don't think it would be as nice as this. This looks more watercolor like, and I'm not painting a photograph. I'm not making a photograph. I'm painting a painting. And so I always say, this has got to look like a painting. This has got to look like a photograph. And there should be a difference. Unless the picture looks like a painting and it looks really great, then yes, go ahead and paint it like that. Then it's, and that's what they do with hyperrealism. If you look at it, that's what they do with hyperrealism. The photo looks great, so they copy the photograph to a T, and that's okay. That's fine. Because if the photograph does look good and you want it to look like that, then copy it. No problem with that whatsoever. Except, we're not the greatest photographers. Those people must have really good photography lesson, because some of them get some really neat shots, and so it's beautiful what they're painting. And so I don't want to learn the camera that well.
Mhm.
I'd rather just paint and have fun with that. And I don't have the patience also. I would never have the patience to do that. I could never, ever. I think about the first hour I was doing that one little, crystal vase, and I'm like, oh God, my eyes would go crazy. And I find though that it's amazing because I've been to a couple workshops like in Canuga down where they were teaching that what's her name? Something.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was there teaching and the people had to.
They did cameras.
Yeah. It's so funny because I was looking a week before the class, they already had to have half their painting done. I think they had to really work on it and stuff. And 'cause it takes forever. It takes a long time to do those paintings.
It's like just a photograph.
Yeah.
But if you think about how many of them are winning awards, it's some pretty nice stuff. But I don't think you get a style then so much as when I went to the TWCA show last year, that whole front wall, the back wall, when you work in, that's the same artist did the whole thing. Like it looks like all the black background,
Right.
and it's the same style. So how can I tell which artist it is? We're like a Kurt Selmanen or John Selmanen. I can tell right away when his work because it's a certain style and it's still tight, but in a different way. It's
In an impressionistic way, maybe.
yeah. It's like a little masking fluid right there. It won't come off. So now I'm gonna burn out his legs. See, like I literally go over it to make it dark, but then I just pick up his leg. That's what I really like about this is I can do that. I don't have to worry about going over something and not having to realize that I can go easily, just as easy going over it later on with the brush and picking it back out again. See, I can just pick out his leg. And that's rubbing out. And that's what like a Ken Collins does a lot with his paintings too. On Arches probably though. And now his legs here, I'm using orange and there's no orange there, but I'm picking up what's underneath and make the leg orange or the feet. And you can also blend, like make it hard edged blend. That's okay too. Nobody's saying that you can't do that. Normally with watercolor, you don't try to keep everything soft and smooth. Okay. I think I'm ready for. Now I feel like a sculptor a lot of times when I'm doing it this way, picking things out because I can look, I go, oh, that's a little bit higher. I can pull that back out again, put back in the color. I can go back and forth where on watercolor paper, kind of can't do that because you're going to constantly get every wash you do on paper, you're going to get worse and worse the paper. It's just going to be blotted. And all right, so I think this one. Let's see, I'm gonna let this dry real quick and then I'm gonna show you how to do the stencil. Maybe I'll do a stencil on here too. That pretty much a little bit here. Maybe some rich darks. I like to look at my screen over here because what you guys are seeing is smaller. And so I can look at it like if I'm at a distance and you guys see it too, because you can see a little bit more than what it looks like at a distance. And I think I need a little bit more detail and color contrast right here where my center of interest is right here. This is my center of interest. So a little bit more detail there, a little more dark to light colors. So I'm putting it on pretty thick and not super thick. It's not like I can feel it bumpy, but I've got it not really wet so it bleeds all over. And most watercolors don't do that. And I think I picked that up because of all the acrylics I've been doing and gouache and using gouache and stuff. I've been really getting into gouache also.
So is that thicker than, how they do the tea, coffee, blah, blah?
Yeah,
and then-
yeah.
Is that like heavy cream or is it thicker than heavy cream even?
It's like butter.
Okay.
I'm using it like butter almost. Like it's like
What
like
is
a
that?
soft butter, like a soft, not a hard butter, but a soft butter.
It's almost like straight out of the tube.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, but it's still wet though, so it's not like, it's like butter.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a soft butter that you let sit out in the room temperature for a little bit. And it's not gonna blend, it's not gonna bleed into something because I don't have water down. So I'm just making it a little bit thicker. And it will give you a texture of your brush too, because if your brush is really frilly, you're gonna get the texture of your brush too. I'm just making a few little darks in there, just
Interesting. Worth trying, yeah. Yes. Interesting to try.
and if I rub my brush like this a little bit, let's see, right here, let me just show you. If you rub it and you just put it down into the white, because you're picking up what's down below, and you just pick and kind of push it right on top of there. See if I just push and rub it a little bit, comes instantly a little bud. Here, let me see if it's stencil on this one. I think that one's on. Let me take the tape off of this one, and we're done with this one. Always good to see it without the tape. And another thing, I use is soft tape. It's not, you can see through it when you put it down on something. So I use it also for stencils, like, because I can take my X-Acto knife and cut around it because you can see through this tape. It's a real thin, sticky, but not so sticky that it pulls up paper either.
It's not regular masking tape.
No, it's not masking tape. No, it's really thin. It's really thin,
What's it called?
Soft?
soft tape.
Really?
Yeah, Holbein makes it, Holbein soft tape.
It's like the magic. Just a tape we had.
Of course, you're gonna get a really harsh edge on Yupo because there's no texture to it. So you're gonna get a really beautiful hard edge. But when it comes to not putting glass on it and not putting a frame on it, start working to the edges or to the thing and measure measure your piece so that when you go cutting it, that it'll fit into one of those frames that you don't have to get made. You know, you don't want to custom make a frame. You want to go and get a 16 by 20 or a 14 by 18 or, you know, make your painting to that size, because then you can buy a frame that size and boom, you're done. You know, I used to frame a lot, but I stopped framing now because of that. That's another reason. It just took too long to actually make the frames. And it's so much cheaper. You buy I just bought 2 frames over at Hobby Lobby yesterday. They were in the clearance section. 2 black frames, they're $3 a piece. I'm like, and there was nothing wrong with them. They're black and they were just a really nice. And I was like, and it wasn't in the area where they had the frames. It was in another part of Hobby Lobby. I was looking for something else. Oh, this black table covering I was looking for my paint parties. I got a paint party for Sharon, who's Sharon Rollins from our club here. Yeah, go ahead.
So when you finish your painting, what do you put it on?
This I'd put on some kind of backing. This is actually a panel. This is a canvas panel, and I could actually mount it on there. I mean, if it was the same size.
How do you do that?
You take an acrylic medium, you take an acrylic medium and then spread it out, and then take this, put it on the back of that, and then just roll it with that one of those roller, what do you call those?
Dryer.
Briars.
Yeah.
You just roll it on there and then put some heavy stuff on top of it and leave it to dry. Hopefully not. No, if you just, put on evenly and stuff, and it should.
Do you varnish it or spray varnish it first and then?
I would do that, yeah. I would spray varnish first. And so you can also just put on like matte board and just leave it on there. You don't have to glue it to it too. I mean, you can just leave it right on there. Like if I left this on here and I didn't have to glue it on there, if it goes in their frame, this is a hard enough panel that would just, be fine. It just happens that this is the panel, this is a canvas panel, so canvas panel, 14 by 18. But that's like I'm saying, make sure that your sizes are standard, because so many of us don't do that. And then you're stuck at the end. Now with watercolor, it's fine because you just use a mat and you just make the mat a little smaller. But if you're not going to use a mat, then you have to make it the size of the frame. You have to. And then you can have a little bit of 1/4 inch available that sits behind the frame. But other than that, you have to have the size of the frame.
How big is your try painting?
What's that?
How big is your try?
On Yupo?
Yeah.
It comes in rolls. It comes in rolls, but you can make it like 4 feet by however roll. So it comes really big if you want it really big. the biggest I've ever done is a full sheet, and that's, you know, the size of like a regular sheet of watercolor paper, 20 by 33 or something like that.
Wouldn't it be nice if the watercolor manufacturers made paper
Yeah.
that was the right sizes for mass?
It's kind of hard because it's, when you think about it, I told them constantly, I'm constantly telling them that, because though if you're using paper, you put a mat on it, then it's like what size you make the painting. But if you look at 16 by 20, it's usually what is it, 11 by 14 frame or mat and stuff. And so you can do that then. And they do make the pads at certain sizes, but some of them are really weird sizes. You wonder why they made them that size. I should ask them one day.
I usually use by the 20 by 30.
Sure,
Just-
see.
and then you just put them in, you have them, that's a decent size.
So these are the stencils. I'm gonna use these stencils. These stencils come from stencilgirlproducts.com, stencilgirlproducts.com. And they come in a big size. This one actually I got, I think at like Hobby Lobby or Michael's, but they were very expensive. I thought it was in a clearance section or something, because some of them were kind of expensive. When I was at Canuga, the store down there had them for $14. But the sizes that, the bigger sizes that are more, I'll just show you. So that are more natural. These have these stencils that are a little bit more. So those are, that's like, it's like, what you call that? What's that in Florida? They have the moss, Spanish moss. That's probably like Spanish moss. And then they have things like this that are just, you know, more natural kind of things. And then you got the ones that are, so when you're using stencils, you got to think to yourself, am I using it to make it look like something in the painting, or am I just using something that's totally opposite of what the painting looks like? So that you can, and you can't use both. Don't try to use both. I've tried it. It doesn't work. Either you make it look like something in the painting, like, let's,
Which one? We bring it over.
that one, yeah. Bring me the book one.
Bring it over in front of the.
Here, I'll just put it on here. So in this one, I use a stencil, you can see as stuff in the background, right? So it looks like that is in the picture. And so that I use a stencil to make it look like the weeds in the background. And then what I'm gonna do today is make it not look like something that's in the background. It's just gonna be a stencil look. It could be like words. I have stencils with words in them. I have stencils with, you know, shapes and.
You're basically adding more pattern and texture to the back.
Yeah, so then you're adding a pattern that is not part of the painting. And it's more kind of abstractish. So you've got something like this, which is a, you know, you got elephants or something.
Yeah.
So here you can see, but there's elephants on this one. Actually, what did you just do is in the black paper. Hold on. So that one has black, that is just elephants, and you know, you got stuff like this was just a grid. Here's some trees. You know, so there's all kinds of stencils, and you gotta remember, you're taking away what's around the stencil. So what's around the stencil is gonna be the dark part. Unless you put paint into it, then it becomes whatever, you know, it'll be light, and then you put, so what, and I just show you. Easier to show you. So now we have our background here. And so I want to do some that is going to be dark. I'm going to spray that in there. And then I want something I pull out away from it. And so the stuff, and I want to make this look like the wings are kind of fluffy, and it's hard for you to see, I'm sure. Can you see?
Okay on the camera,
Okay.
I think.
So I'm gonna put dark down here. I'm gonna put a dark stencil down here. That's so I will be putting in paint. Here, I'm gonna take away the paint, so I get back to the light of the paper. And so what I want is a kind of a swirly look, and I want it to be kind of looking like it's. So I'm using part, and I never use a whole stencil. I just use parts of the stencil to make it look interesting. And I'm wondering if I should use a smaller one. I think a smaller one will look better. Okay, you guys say yes, so I have to do it. Just how I'm gonna arrange it here. I'm gonna make it so that the wing looks like the wing is fluttering like this. So what I want to do is, or maybe down here. The nice thing is you get two different ways. When you flip it over, it's the opposite of what you're using the front side. So if I go like this and I'll do little parts, I'll show you how I do little parts. You see my, oh, there it is. So what you do is when you're taking out, you just wet it and then totally rinse it out. Magic eraser. It's not the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, but they have the other ones that are just like it. You can get a dollar store for $1.25 now. And the dollar store is now $1.25 store. So what you do is you just tap, especially on, and you can't have it wet. It cannot be wet where it's dripping, because then it goes underneath the stencil and then you ruin everything. So you're just gonna go like this, you're gonna rub. And it's very simple to take off on Yupo compared to like paper, because here it just comes like instantly comes off. So I'm taking this part off first. I just want the wing to like look like it's, so that's gonna be there. And so then I put it over here. I wish I had a little more paint there, but I can also go back in there and do the little spot there too. And so then we're gonna go opposite that and let that, see, I want this like little swirliness going on in there.
Did you say you got those at Hobby Lobby?
These I got at stencilgirlproducts.com.
Okay.
I did, I met somebody when I was in Texas. I was in San Antonio, I think, and there was a show there, and the lady next to me, Trish McKinney, who was a watercolorist, but she was doing gel, and she used one of those what do you call those? Brayers, and she had acrylic, and she put it across the stencils. Gel, what do they call it? Gel plate, yeah. Yeah.
What are those called? Those painting stencils, or what are they?
Yeah, just stencils, just and she was using them, and then I asked her where she got them, and then she told me, and she goes, here, I'm gonna give you one of them. So she gave me one of them, and I contacted Stencil Girl Products, and they said, well, if you write a little article for our blog and one of your stencils, we'll give you $50 worth of stencils. And I said, okay. So I did that, and so I just basically also wipe off your stencil, make sure it's not wet. So I just did that, and I saw a lot of parts got a little wet there. And so I did the article for their blog. Stencil Girl, stencilgirlproducts.com.
Stencil girl.
Stencil Girl, yep.
Like girl and boy.
Yep. And usually a bigger one is 14, the smaller ones are 7. It's usually what the prices are. Now see, I got that wet, and so it kind of mixed up a little bit there, but that's okay.
Coming up on time, David, as well.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Yep, we only got one more thing to do. Do a little bit back here, and then I'm gonna show you how to do the dark, and we're done. But now with the dark, I have an airbrush, and an airbrush that has a compressor all inside, and it's not battery operated. It's a battery in there, but I just charge it with a USB cord. And all I do is I put the color that I want, watercolor. I just take, let's say I'm gonna use the same colors that I have there. I mix a really watery batch of that color. So and there's a little cup at the top there, you see. I'm just gonna get a lot of water, mix the color. I'll make it a bluey, violety color. Oh, that's brown. Don't want that. And then I just swipe it in there. See, I'm just gonna take it like this, the blue, and just put it in there, just wipe it in there. I gotta have enough in there so that I don't have to stop, because I don't want to stop once I get going. So I'm just mixing it up, a lot of water, a lot of pigment. It's gotta be like an ink. Just think of it as an ink. It's gotta be watery. And I've never had a problem with figuring it out. And also, don't do this right away on your painting. Turn it on. You can hear it. Turn it back up here. I haven't cleaned this one, so hopefully this will work. There we go.
We can't see that one.
Okay, I'm just practicing. Hold on.
Okay,
I'm just seeing if it's,
So is there a little lever on top? that you pull
yeah,
back?
you pull back the lever on top, and I noticed I didn't clean this one, so it's not coming out as nicely as I would have wanted to, but it'll be fine. And then I'm gonna push this up a little bit. You guys still see that area?
So you don't want to hold it horizontal.
Yeah, because it'll pour out. So I have to make it so that I can actually do the spraying. And make sure you clean your brushes when you're done. I'm very bad at that. Especially because I'm at a demonstration and I totally forget about when I get home. Last time I used this was down in Florida.
Is there a little needle in there? that you
Yep.
can pull out and clean?
That you have to clean, yep. And now, while that's still there, since I'm gonna,
You mean you can't just run water through it to clean it?
you can, but every once in a while you gotta actually take it out because it's drying as you're spraying, it's drying a little bit on the needle itself.
Because I bought one of those. I mean.
You
oh,
just take it
well,
apart. You take it apart. Yeah, you take the whole thing apart. You unscrew it and there's a needle and they take a little plier and you just pull the needle out. And then they also comes with this little like pipe thing that you put in there. It's like a little brush.
Oh,
You put it through there. So you really should clean them once in a while. Good. Nice. Let's see. Put a little bit more, a little darker right here. Now, sometimes you think, well, you can do it like this. You can do it like that, but you hardly ever use water again. So let's say if I want to use my brush for that, I gotta get rid of all the water in my brush and just and poke straight down. Like poke straight down, and this is probably too wet.
You could stipple with a toothbrush.
Yeah, you can stipple with a toothbrush also. Yeah, you definitely take a toothbrush like this. Going like that, and also just, spray it like that. You can do that. Where's my water? Oh, here it is. So definitely, yeah, you can do that. Anything you can just put on there, but doesn't make it too wet, because wet will go behind the stencil. So yeah, you can do that too. Good suggestion. Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
There's my old memory days.
So see how it just gives it a little bit, kind of a little texture there, a little bit of something, and I forgot the eye. One more thing, and then we're done. Gotta give the little guy an eye.
Did a nice job.
And then your finest details. And you can do some swirlies with your brushes too. Like I can take white or black and I can just make it look like the edge there.
That's a technical term, swirly.
It's swirly and it's very technical. This is like calligraphy now. You kind of can go in there and put like little lines in there and such. Okay, I think that's done too. Let me just put the tape off and we're done for all time.
okay, quick question
Yes.
from the virtual group. I prepared brush and where to get one.
It's called a makeup brush. It's for makeup artists who put makeup on people and they put the spray like the foundation or whatever they call it on the face. And so for the cheeks, yeah, and try it on your cheeks if you want. A little perfect, a little purple.
We just stipple with a toothbrush.
Yeah.
I'm sure you could find it on Amazon.
This one, Eric always asked me, and actually I was doing a couple of things for a couple of art stores, and they even asked me, like, "Where'd you get that? Where'd you get that?" I go, "Well, it's for makeup artists." Again, you look up on Amazon. I got on Amazon. You look up makeup artist airbrush, or makeup airbrush, and you'll get a lot of them it comes with makeup, like and stuff. But this one, they usually run around $50 to $60, and they come with like a bunch of these different cups. You can also you can close it with like the top here if you have, like if you did want to do it like upwards or something, and then you do have a top. I guess I could have put that. It screws on. See, it just screws on there. And so you can make it leak proof. And so now I'll forget about it. And so now I'll be dirty again the next time. So, but,
But it doesn't. how do you
and it doesn't have a
distinguish
brand
it?
name though. It doesn't have like, it's not like, Porsche, what do they call the other? It doesn't like those, the big name company, airbrush companies don't make it. What I would suggest though, is that you look at the image and make sure, because I bought 5 of these for my classes and each one broke. The first day I used it, first time I used it up in Wisconsin, because this part that connects to this is the compressor basically. So if you look, this part is the compressor, right? This is the airbrush. This part right there that I'm pointing to, that part, make sure it's metal. And there's a nut right there because the other ones were plastic. And so that just broke off instantly. All I did was put it down and it just, now I have to somehow figure out how I'm gonna put like a little thing to them, like a little hose to get to the airbrush. Because basically that part should be metal. And then this one has no problems. And so I started buying other ones that now have all metal. That was like about $250 wasted down the drain because it broke right away the first time I used them. And they were black and they're all plastic down here. This is all metal. So get yourself a metal one. And they are not a brand name, and you plug them into the computer. It's a USB, a charger, and it just charges. And so if you're playing error, you don't have to have all the cords and stuff. I had in my newsletter, I did do that one with all the wires and hoses and stuff. It's just a problem because you got to find a plug for one. And this one, you just take around anywhere. And look at it, I just did it right here, and no big deal. It just charged. And so really nice. And you can hear it's not loud. It's not that loud. It's just a little hum. So there you go. There you have it. Any other questions before we stop?
Okay, I'll tell them another-
Great demo. Really loved it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Becca. And there's the other one. All right, so there they are.
Very nice.
Very simple, very simple. Get yourself some Yupo. And again, take one of each pad.
And you said Michael's or Hobby Lobby sells?
You can get, you can get like little packs, but they're not big paper. It's not, I don't think they sell the pads. I'm not sure if they sell the pads or not.
I was thinking Frank might enjoy it. You want to turn off the Zoom now?
Yep.
So Dave, next month, with